Thank you guys so much for coming and being here today. This is probably, I like to think of the most important recital that we put on throughout our season because it is a recital of living composers that are around here. They're like local composers. So in order for the music world to advance, we need people writing new music. So it's really important that we can play this, and we are so grateful to all of the composers that submitted entries. So I do want to say we are a nonprofit orchestra, so we kind of survive off of grants and also donations. So if you would like to help us out, we are able to have all of our concerts for free, both our orchestra concerts and our recital concerts. We have a donation box in the back, and then also on your program, so you're able to kind of see we have some donation options. We also, if you own a business, we offer kind of business packages for us to promote your business. You're able to contact development@smartorchestra.com if that .org, sorry, if that's something you're interested in. We're going to go ahead and get started. I do want to make one quick addition to the program that I forgot. On our first piece, Impressions, we do have our bassist Leo. He's going to be joining us. I forgot his name in the program, so I'm going to go ahead and call him. I know, I'm so sad. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and invite Ritika to come up. She's our first composer today.
In the Austin area. I mainly work on film scores and things like that, video games. Upcoming, I've got Panoramic Voices, so a concert on the 4th and the 5th where my work was commissioned. So it's a 200-piece choir with a 5-piece mezzo-soprano solo group. So that's upcoming. A little bit about this piece, Impressions. It was written as a study on the Impressionist movement because earlier this year I was performing with Central Texas Philharmonic, which is up in Georgetown, if any of y'all like orchestra music and want to travel up north for that. We were doing a lot of Debussy and Ravel, and so I was studying the harmonies on that, and the fastest way to learn something is to do it. So this is that piece. Thank you so much for being here.
musicians for playing. My younger son went to ACL Music Festival in Austin a few years ago, dressed as a banana, of course, and met his future wife, who was dressed as a flamingo, naturally. And so a few years later, they planned to get married, and my older son and I wrote this piece together for their wedding. So, Bananas and Flamingos. Thank you so much.
to perform our last piece for the afternoon. It's going to be a bit of a transition in octet, which means there are 8 players. I would like to invite Dr. Poole to come speak a little bit about the Smart Orchestra while we do this transition.
So just think of me like that bit of music in theater that covers the scene changes. That's my purpose. To tell you a little bit about the Smart Orchestra, parent organization for the sessions concerts we do here at the library. Our parent organization is an orchestra, a non-profit orchestra. In other words, we don't charge for concerts. We are about, I think, in the vicinity of 55 members. And we give free concerts out at San Marcos High School. We're performing out at the center 4 times during the season. October, December, February, and May. We also do our May concert. We also repeat at Wimberley Winery out in Wimberley, weather and other logistics permitting. This season, I'm very excited about it. It's always interesting. A lot of symphony orchestras have a theme for their season, and you have this theme, and then you model concerts to go along with the theme. The funny thing is that I programmed the season, and the actual theme of it came naturally from what I programmed. And we're calling this season "Once Upon an Orchestra," adventures in symphonic storytelling. And our first concert on October 19th is we call it a night at the opera, and we'll be doing arias, duets, and orchestral works from, think of it maybe as opera's greatest hits. And interestingly enough, our 2 sopranos actually come from within our viola section. Here's Betsy. Yeah, one of them is with us today. Yes, you can applaud. That's good. Always good to applaud the viola section. In our December concert, we'll have music from the Polar Express. We're going to have a little of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker, but not what you might expect. I'm just going to leave that as a surprise. In February, we're looking to work with the folks from the Baroque Thespians Theater Company, and our theme for that concert is music based on the works of William Shakespeare. So some music inspired by Much Ado About Nothing, Othello, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Henry V. And then finally, for our final Pops concert in May, we're going to go even further afield to among other places, a galaxy far, far away. We call this To Boldly Go, a symphonic sci-fi fantasy experience. We're still making plans on this, but you might expect a little bit of orchestra and audience cosplay as a result of this. As long as it doesn't get in the way of you playing the instrument, it's all good. So we look to have a good time with that. I will also add one more thing, is that our orchestra is open to everyone by audition. And to set up an audition, if you've got that old Stradivarius in the closet, or Douglas Ace, or sousaphone, or whatever you have, and you think, I'd like to start playing that again, go to our website, click the link that says Make Music With Us, and that will take you to a thing that says Online Audition Form. And click that, fill it out, submit it, and we'll be in touch. So thank you all for coming this afternoon, and we're going to conclude with the octet for the history of music. Wow.